Hello, 49er fans. This is Jack Hammer from the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Cover the 49ers there and do the 49ers inside the 49ers blog there, 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. Hope you're all doing well on this post-draft Monday. Wanted to come on and take some of your calls, get your thoughts on the way that this draft went down over the weekend. And not only the draft, but also the undrafted free agent signings that the 49ers made post the draft. Feel pretty good about this draft. But before we get into it, just want to throw out a couple of the comments over in the second row here. Some folks that are with us. KW2421 says, "Wake up, Jack. I'm awake. I'm ready to go." Bomber T's in the house. He says, "Hey, Jack. Hope all is well." We got our good buddy E. Kim says, "Hey, Jack." And we're going to get to him in just a minute. Before we do, just want to give some of my quick overview of the draft. Overall, I think that the 49ers did a pretty good job in this draft, especially when you consider that they didn't have a first-round draft pick. They came into the draft with a need to get an edge pass rusher. That wasn't really their top need, but it was one of them. They had a need to get some work on their interior of the offensive line. They needed to work on the cornerback position, safety, running back, wide receiver with speed. They get that speed guy. They kind of added a couple of those through free agency at the wide receiver position, but it was still a point of need. I think the other thing when you look at the draft overall, it's important to remember the draft isn't just about finding players that are going to be able to help your team this season here in 22, but it also is about how you can build it for beyond. And when you look at the way that this team was set up under John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, they built a really deep roster. Like for example, the defensive line, that's the one that I know some people have pointed to. Why did they go edge rusher in the second round at pick 61? They had bigger needs than an edge rusher, especially with, they already have Nick Bosa. They have Samson Ebukam. They have Kamoko Toure that they just signed. They have, overall 11 really good defensive linemen that have NFL experience that could get onto an NFL roster. And there's a few others as well, but they have a really deep room there. And I think what's important is when you look at the way this 49er roster is constructed, they only have 3 of their defensive linemen signed past 2022. Nick Bosa, Javon Kinlaw, and Eric Armstead. We know that Bosa is going to be due for a big extension here in a couple of years. He's, the 49ers picked up their 5th-year option with him, and it's going to be over almost $18 million for the 2023 season if that's what he plays under. Kinlaw is a former first-round draft pick. They could always pick up the 5th-year option on him in a couple of years, but for now he's relatively cheap. And Eric Armstead's on a situation where they're going to have to keep rolling his deal over, I think, unless they decide that they're finally going to take the big cap hit on him. So by going out and getting a guy like Drake Jackson here at round 2, and then going Kalia Davis in round 6, they set them up with a couple of guys that are can give them a lot for the next 4 years on pretty cheap deals a guy like Jackson there in round 2, they're not going to have a 5th-year option with him, but they'll get 4 years out of him cheap if he's able to do what they expect him to do. And the same thing with Kalia Davis there. So, and it goes beyond just that as well. You also have that kind of with the offensive line with the Burford and Zackel picks, guys that can develop down the road. And I think when you look at the way that this draft set up for the 49ers, that's a lot of it, I think, is about guys that might be able to fill roles for you this year. Most of these guys are going to end up on the bench and not really playing a whole lot in 2022. The 49ers already have a pretty deep roster and some really good pieces. So, it's a little bit of a mixture of getting guys that there's a few guys that can help you now, and there's a few guys that are really going to help you down the road. And when you look at that, and then you start looking at the undrafted free agents, if we were sitting here on Friday night after round 3 of the draft, and the 49ers had taken Donovan West out of Arizona State at number 105 or pick 93 on Friday, nobody would have complained. Everybody would have felt that was a really good pick. This is a guy who's a really good center, did a really good job at Arizona State. And instead of even using a draft pick on him, they pick him up as an undrafted free agent after the draft. Same thing with Leon O'Neal Jr. He's a safety out of Texas A&M. If the 49ers had drafted him around 6 or 7, nobody would have blinked an eye, and they still were able to pick him up. And you can say the same thing about Jason Poe as well, the offensive lineman for Mercer. So we can get into that a little bit more, but got a bunch of folks here on the line. I see that, which is nice. So we'll get into it. And then I'm also going to be bouncing back and forth between that and some of my other stuff. So Let me get this rolling really quick, and we're going to jump over to Korean 49er. He's going to be the first one up, but let me just change this up really quick. You know what? I know Korean Niner, so I'm just going to go. I'm going to roll with it. Hey, how you doing, Korean Niner?
I'm good, Jack. How are you doing tonight?
I'm hanging in there. How you doing? Good, good. You already said you're doing good. I need to listen better.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. Don't worry about it. Um, my only complaint about the draft was the running back at the in the third round. I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of felt it was a reach when the 49ers have usually found running backs in the fifth, sixth, and seventh, and even undrafted free agency route. That was my only complaint. Not that I don't like the player. I think he's a if they draft you, they believe in you to make some kind of an impact in the league. So
Yeah, I'm with you in that I think on the opposite way is that I didn't have a problem with the 49ers taking a running back at 93. I felt that there was a really good chance they were going to take one at 93 or 105. For me, it's the opposite of you though. For me, it's more about who they picked at that spot. Davis Price is a guy who I don't know. I don't know what they're seeing in him. He had a couple big games at LSU, but other than that, he's kind of a middle of the road running back with a lot of what I see from him.
yeah, that my only thing was is if they picked him up in the fifth or sixth round, like they did with Elijah Mitchell last year, I don't think I would have had nobody would say anything. Or it's like, oh, that's the usual 49ers route of finding a running back in that fashion.
Yeah, and I don't, it's they took a guy in the third last year, and it's a need for him, and I don't know if he would if this particular if Davis Price if he would have been there in 4 or 5, then that's great. I get if they were super sold on him, I just don't know. I agree with you in that I'm just a little bit disappointed in this pick. They can completely, he can completely come in and prove me wrong. But from what I've seen of him so far, in just watching the film that I have, he's Elijah Mitchell part two. The only difference is maybe he's going to be healthy.
Hopefully, he can take some a little bit of keep some wear and tear off Elijah this year. Take a few carries, and hopefully Trey Sermon can actually see the field a few more times. I know that Trey needs a few more carries to get himself really going in games. It's understandable, but hopefully that'll be the case.
Well, and what you just said right there is one of my concerns with Davis Price is that when you read the scouting reports and you listen to what people say about him, he's a volume back. So the more carries he gets, the better he gets, and that's why he's better in the second half of games and so on and so forth. But unless he's the starter, he's not going to get a high volume of carries. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes. The one thing that makes me positive about this is that Shanahan has dealt with bigger backs like Price in the past. When he was with Washington, they had Alfred Morris over there, and he was a 6th-round pick. So it goes back to what you were saying earlier as far as the round. But he's had success with bigger backs. So maybe Price is going to be able to run that outside zone scheme for him. We'll see how it works out.
Yep. And I sent this to you in the chat that right now, if I'm the 49ers, either sign or trade Debo. There's no reason to keep him unless, if you give him a big offer like 4 years, 110 million with a lot of guaranteed money in the first 2 years with a big signing bonus, and Debo still says no, at least you gave it your best shot, and now you got to move him on because if he's going to stay disgruntled and dug his heels in and said, I'm going to huff and puff and never play for you guys again, you got to do what you got to do. I'm not going to get angry at John Lynch for at least throwing the big number out there, and Debo was the one who said no, in his team, I
Yeah.
should.
Well, and you're right, and that's where the 49ers are kind of on a slippery slope with this, right? They had they were offered the 10th pick from the Jets, and they turned that over. If you look at what the Philadelphia Eagles sent to Tennessee for AJ Brown, uh, the 49ers would have got a better deal for Deebo Samuel had they done the deal. The point number is bigger for the 10th and the 5th than what the Eagles sent over. So yeah, if the 49ers can't get a deal done with Deebo Samuel, or end up trading him later on this year, like before the season starts or whatever, it's going to be something that definitely needs to be brought up, and written about in terms of not a positive light, because it's not a good decision to pass it up and then eventually have to trade him anyway.
Yeah, I think they would have been John Lynch and the front office would have been in a better spot if they got a very good player this year instead of hoping that they get a top 15 pick next year, because you never know who you trade to may have a very good season and then that pick may be in the 20s instead of in the teens, lower teens.
Right? Yeah, like kind of like what happened to Miami, right? They made that trade, and then instead of having a high pick and with said the second year of the Trey Lance trade, they're picking at 29. So they traded it anyway, but still, you get the picture that I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I am happy though they did draft a couple of offensive linemen and bring in some undrafted free agents for competition on the offensive line, because I'm not sure what the plan with the front office is on Alex Mack and Mike McGlinchey, but just having them come back, expecting them to come back full time, I think it's kind of you're throwing sand up in the air and seeing it all try to come back down in your hand. I think that's kind of I don't think it's the right way to proceed for those two players at those two positions.
Yeah, and McGlinchey's playing under his fifth-year option, so there's no guarantee that he's going to be back next year anyway. If the 49ers are going to want to pay him that kind of money, so that's where Jalen Moore might come in, and there's no guarantee that Alex Mack isn't going to be back next year. He hasn't retired. The 49ers haven't said he's retiring. They've, and it takes me back to what they said last year about all the speculation around Mac Jones. They just kind of let that play out, and they said, well, there's no reason for us to fix it. That's everybody else can assume if they want. And I think that could be happening with Alex Mack. I don't know anything more than anybody else, but it just seems like maybe that's the direction they're going, because they didn't pick a center in the draft. So if you come back this next year with Jalen Moore as your swing tackle, you have a guy that can step in there, and you have a couple of other guys here who can work in behind Daniel Brunskill and be ready to take over in 2023.
Yeah, with McGlinchey though, with that torn quad, not very many players come back at all, or even let's just say 50% of what they were. So you have to at least plan for, let's just say, hey, Jalen, just get ready to be a full-time starter at the right tackle position, because
yes,
McGlinchey, he may still be rehabbing during the season.
Absolutely. No, you're right. And he has to be preparing like he's going to be the starter, right? I'm talking about Jalen Moore. So yeah, he needs to be ready to play as week one. I would hope that he's preparing that way, because even if McGlinchey is doing well in his progress, there's no guarantee he's going to be ready. So Jalen Moore, if he's the week one starter right tackle, I'd be fine with that.
Yep. And the one last point about the draft is, I was wondering if they would pick up a safety. Maybe, I think they may have gotten one in the undrafted free agency signing period, but I would still bring back Tart, because I know he made the mistake in the championship game by not intercepting the ball, but I know what I'm getting from him. He's a very solid tandem with Jimmy Ward. And to me, I know what I get with Tart compared to maybe someone else who may be filling in that position.
Yeah, they signed Leon O'Neal, the safety from Texas A&M. They signed him as the undrafted free agent. If I had to bet, my bet would be that Jaquiski Tart does not come back to the 49ers, just because it doesn't seem like there's any kind of a positivity there. When the 49ers were asked about Jason Verrett earlier in the offseason, they said they'd be open to it. I didn't get that kind of vibe from them on Sunday or Saturday when they were asked about Tart being a guy that might come back. It just, they hadn't talked to him. They talked about how much they liked him. I mean, they kind of left the door open, but that isn't a move that I see happening. I think they're happy with the Odom signing. I think they like Talanoa Hufanga, and obviously they like Jimmy Ward for now. So I just don't see Tart coming back to the team.
I think that's most likely the outcome also. So I wasn't trying to get your gander up on the second day wrap up. It was just, I just felt that was a way early when they got the running back.
No, I hear you. We're not, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, don't worry about it. I just felt that was a little bit of a reach at the time when Kyle usually found those kind of running backs a little bit later in the draft.
Sure. Sure. No, I understand. That's what you always hear, right? Is that Shanahan doesn't need to run. He can make running backs out of everybody, yada, yada, yada. Um, it just seemed to me like they were going to, from everything that was in the run up to the draft, it seemed like it was pretty clear they were going to go running back in the third round just by the names that were being put out around them. I'm surprised that they went with who they did. So we'll see how it works out. Davis Price could surprise me, and I hope he does for the Niners' sake.
Hopefully, if he gets 1,000-yard season, that's cherry on top. So,
Hey,
all right.
if he gets 1,000-yard season, that means the 49ers are running the heck out of the ball because either he's getting 1,000 yards or Elijah Mitchell is. So, or maybe they both do. Who knows?
So I do have one question for you, an over/under.
Okay.
Do you see more than 100 carries for Trey Sermon this season?
No.
Yeah, I see the same thing too.
Don't see it. Don't see it. So, yep.
All right. Thank you, Jack.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
All right. All right. I'm going to jump over. We're going to do another call, and then we got Eric on the line too. So we'll get to you in just a second, Eric. Let me change this up real quick. And Simon, are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm also doing great, thank you.
Good.
So, I think it's best to continue on Ty Davis Price. It seems to me like he might become the main topic on the conversation of this show.
Uh-huh.
I think he might be a bit of a panic Debo pick, because I think my initial instinct was when I heard his name called is that they're really not sure what's going on with Deebo Samuel right now. Whether they're going to extend him, whether he'll hold out, or maybe he'll refuse to play running back, something along these lines. And if you look at the draft profile, he ran the same 40 as Deebo Samuel. He has similar height, weight. He also has some other similar athletic traits, like I've heard that he's not afraid to run through contact, that his overall speed and acceleration is way better than that 40 time would indicate. So I think they might have looked at it as we don't really know what's happening with Debo, and at this point, this is the most similar guy. I'm not saying he is Debo, but they have some common traits, and they just kind of forced this pick at this point. I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's definitely not Debo. He's not bad. I'm kind of excited for his pass protection because I think that might free up Kittle a little bit on third down. Because this year, when McGlinchey wasn't playing, Kittle was sometimes used in pass protection. And if you have a running back that's going to be very good in pass protection, maybe Kittle can be used more as a receiver. And I think there would be few running backs in this class, especially available at 93.
Yeah,
That would be better than Kittle in terms of receiving.
You made a couple of really good points. First off, really quick before we get too far, I want to say that you mentioned right away that you think it might be a little bit of a panic pick, and I'm going to say I agree with you that it might have been a panic, not because of Deebo Samuel necessarily, but because I think there was a running back that had been taken off the board right before them. I think a running back went at 92. And then they took the next running back at the next pick. I think they saw a running back go. There's a possibility that they saw a running back go off the board there at 92, and we're like, oh, we better jump on this guy now instead of waiting. That's a guess of mine, though. And then in terms of
it might have been Rashad White has also been linked with them. He was a bit better of a pass catcher than Price is. And that's what some people thought 49ers were lacking. So definitely.
Yeah. And then in terms of, Price, he definitely likes contact, but I wouldn't put him in the Debo category in terms of the speed. He doesn't have, I don't see him having that ability to get to the corner the way that you see Deebo Samuel get to the edge and then take it up the field.
Oh, I'm not saying he's Debo, but he might have been the most similar player available at that point.
I think that Davis Price is a really strong combination of Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon. He's Elijah Mitchell in that he is a between the tackles runner who does like contact, and he's a Trey Sermon he's similar to Sermon in that he needs to get carries in order to be at his best. He's a volume back, meaning he needs to get carries, and so I don't know if he's necessarily an upgrade over either of those. I think he might be insurance uh, for it though, because I don't, Elijah Mitchell was dinged up throughout the year, and Davis Price is a little bit bigger, and we know that Elijah Mitchell's been asked to put on some weight as well. I think that's all in an effort to kind of keep him healthy throughout the whole year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think he will have a role in this offense, and if you could somehow split the carries between Mitchell, Sermon, and Davis Price, I think we'd be in a very good spot there.
Mm-hmm.
Because this volume thing, I do not know how real it is. How much is it? I mean, it sounds a bit counterintuitive to me at first. There might be something to it. I've never played football, so I don't know. But I think it's something that maybe can be coached up or something along these lines.
Think of it more as like, needing to get into the flow of the game and needing to kind of feel your way through it. And just, you're not quite sure the first couple of times you carry the ball, what you're saying. And so the more you get it, the more you're kind of wearing down the defense and you're starting to feel where everybody's going, kind of along those lines.
Yeah, but shouldn't that also come like generally with experience of playing football overall, not just with specifically in a single game, but overall? And Davis Price didn't get a lot of production in college. He had like only a bit over 400 carries for his career. I'm not 100% sure on that number, so it might be an experience in general, not only due to the fact that it's slow to start.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That would be a good way of explaining it.
Okay, two more things I have. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but about Danny Gray.
Uh-huh.
Do you think he's an upgrade or a downgrade over Benjamin?
Are you asking me if I feel like he's an upgrade or a downgrade?
Yeah.
I think he's an upgrade over Benjamin. He has the speed to be the deep guy like Benjamin is, but he's more of an underneath threat as well. He has that ability to go up underneath and hit, in the middle and short as well. Benjamin's more of just a deep guy. The piece that I like about Gray is that he only has 18 games at SMU. So he's learning. He's going to get better, I think, with the 49ers over his time here. He's kind of like the quarterback, right? Trey Lance only had he had minimum number of starts, so it took him a little while to get into the 49ers felt like they had to bring him along slow. I think it's going to be similar with Danny Gray. He's a multiple talent.
Yeah, and I also think that he doesn't necessarily have to have statistical production early on to have a significant impact. Because even if he gets like 160-yard touchdown in the preseason or something, it might make some team respect him enough to put an extra safety or something if you prove on a few occasions that he is that deep threat, and it might open more space underneath for other players.
Absolutely.
So I really like the pick. I also think that they didn't address the lack of speed when they lost Mostert.
Mm-hmm.
So Gray, I'm not necessarily sure he could play running back, but they could give him a few carries, and I don't think he'll be having any issues getting to the edge. So jet sweeps, outside zone, I definitely see some possibilities there. I think they drafted him over Calvin Austin because he's a bit taller. So it might be easier, especially that Lance's issue are mainly linked to inaccuracy right now.
Yeah, he's a tough receiver. It's going to be fun to watch what he does, and I like what you said there too, because he could have a big impact on the Flyers offense and not even touch the ball just by opening up everything for Brandon Ayuk and Juwan Jennings and George Kittle and so on, being that guy that takes the coverage deep and allows the other guys to work underneath.
Yes,
that's a really good
definitely.
point.
I mean, I'm very excited for this pick. I don't think it was a bad pick at all. And if he works on his hands and route running, he might become a really solid starter in this league.
Yeah.
And last one question, not about the draft, but about Verrett. As you probably know, he's been re-signed today. So do you think it would be a viable strategy to keep him only for big games, to limit his snaps as much as possible, and say, for example, when they're playing the Rams or some other big games, and just say, hey, you go cover Cooper Cup, and if we were to play against, well, we don't really have bad teams on the schedule this year. That's the issue. But against the worst opponent, they would be like, we're not going to really give you snaps. We don't want to risk an injury. Do you
Yeah,
think
no,
that would be a valid strategy, or would that throw a player off their rhythm too much and would make
I don't,
them perform worse?
I don't know if that's something that they can do, but Jason Verrett is an incredibly talented defensive back who, when he is healthy, is really good. But everybody knows the issue there. He's only played 40 games in 8 years because he can't stay healthy. So, I like the signing and that it gives them good depth. I didn't like it last year when they re-signed him because they didn't have the depth around him. This time they do. So I think this is a better. I like this re-signing of him this year better than I did last year, if that makes sense. Because if he doesn't make the team, it's okay. The 49ers still, I think, have a pretty good secondary.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's why I thought that they might limit his snap count as much as possible because he is so good, and on some key downs or in key games, if it wouldn't throw him off his rhythm too much, he could really contribute with reducing that risk of an injury happening on some, for example, obvious run play where he wouldn't necessarily be as important or something like that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about their ability to pull him up and down like they've done with some other guys.
Okay. So, thank you very much for your time. I really like the show. Usually I don't get to watch it in the evenings because I'm from Europe, so it's a bit late for me.
No problem. Where are you in Europe?
Warsaw, Poland.
Okay, Poland. Okay.
I usually watch your shows in the morning.
Okay.
But the third is the national holiday, so I thought I might as well, especially that I'm in this draft mode of staying up late. So
There you go. I really appreciate you calling in. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time and have a nice day.
Well, you too. Take care, Simon.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, real quick. That was a good one. I'm going to jump right over. Simon, thanks so much for calling in all the way from Poland. That was pretty exciting. Get a feel for from Europe. That's pretty good. Hey, Eric, are you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here. What's up, Jack? How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. So I think I'm really pleased with the way that the draft went and also the undrafted free agents they were able to add. Going into it, I was looking at it. Basically, I had 3 different categories. There were needs, there were luxuries, and then there were positions of depth where they could add. And I think that they hit all 3 of those. So we'll start with the needs. I thought going in the draft that the biggest needs were safety, center, and slot corner. Now, you got to bear in mind where the 49ers were drafting. This isn't like the Jets where they had number 4, number 10, number 35, number 38. So they were starting off, their first pick was 61. So they couldn't get all the top-end talent. So it seems to me that their strategy for these 3 positions of need wasn't to draft one player or acquire one player. It's to acquire multiple players and put them into a competition. Mm-hmm. So we'll start with the center position. From what I understand, both Spencer Burford and Nick Zakelj have the potential to play center. So they drafted 2 guys who could play center, and then they also signed Donovan West as an undrafted free agent.
I don't think Burford's going to play center. He could play guard, but Zakelj, yes. So I think when you're and just kind of, I'm sorry for interrupting, but just kind of going along with what you're saying, Zakelj, it would be Zakelj and West would be the 2, like you're in that situation.
I don't know if you saw John Lynch did an interview with Adam Peters after the draft, and he was asked about Spencer Burford's potential to play center. And I forget if it was Lynch or Peters that responded, but they said that they drafted Burford with the understanding that he may be able to play center. So I think that they're looking at that pick as another one. But again, even if Zakelj or Donovan West is one that wins the competition, the point is if you don't have a top 10 pick, you don't have a first-round pick, you can't draft a Tyler Linderbaum and a guy that you can say, okay, this is definitively going to be the replacement for Alex Mack. Instead, you draft several players, you put them into a competition, and you see who wins the competition. So I like that. It seems like they also had that same strategy at safety. Now, they didn't draft a safety, but they already have Talanoa Hufanga and Tarveris Moore on the roster. and they also signed Leon O'Neal as an undrafted free agent. And before that, in the free agency period, they had picked up George Odom as well. So obviously, Jimmy Ward is going to play one of the safety positions. He's flexible. I believe he could play either position. So I think between Odom, Hufanga, Moore, and O'Neal, you put those 4 guys in an open competition training camp, and you see which one of them can win the other safety position opposite of Jimmy Ward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you're on the right track with that's how the 49ers view this.
Yeah. And then also with slot corner, they didn't just draft one player to play slot corner, from what I understand. And I didn't really know too much about these guys going into the draft, but I've read some of their draft profiles after the draft, and it seems that both Samuel Womack and Tariq Castro-Fields both have the potential to play slot corner. Also still have Diamador Lenore. So I think that's another area where instead of being able to draft one guy such as Marcus Jones and saying this is going to be the next slot corner, they have several guys they can put in an open competition, and whoever wins that competition will be able to take that spot.
Yeah, and I really like I really like this what they did at the end of round 6. Really even going back to Zakel. And Zakel, Davis, Castro Fields, those are all guys who were drafted below where they were expected to go. They were all expected to go higher prospects than where they went. They weren't, Zakel was expected to go higher than 187. Davis was as well, and so was Castro Fields. And the 49ers got really good value, I think, for all those. Castro Fields is the guy the 49ers thought they thought they might have a chance to draft him last year, but he decided to stay in school. There's a site that puts out, they call it was a relative athletic score, and it rates all these different things. And Castro Fields had an extremely high number. He had one of the higher numbers in that of all the 49er draft picks. He's an extremely athletic guy who's has all the measurables, all the tools. He just hasn't quite put it together for one reason or another. It's going to be interesting to see how the 49ers, if they're able to get that out of him, because this is a guy who has, big time corner potential written all over him. He just needs to figure it out. And I'm not sure. We'll see how it works out.
And it's really impressive how over the last 2 years, cornerback has gone from a position of need into, at this point, I mean, it's a borderline embarrassment of riches at this point, especially after you brought back Jason Verrett. When Jason Verrett's healthy, he's the number 1 corner. He's one of the 32 best cornerbacks in the league. I can say that definitively. So he has potential to be number 1 corner. Charvarius Ward already proved that he's a number 1 corner. Emmanuel Mosley, if he's your number 2 or 3 corner, that's excellent. You also, and then last year, like I said, they drafted Ambry Thomas and Diamador Lenore. They took 2 more corners this year. So a couple years ago, it was, looking kind of bleak. And now they have, young athletic players. They have older established veterans. They have a really good mix of guys back there. And, I really like the way they upgraded from cornerback. So going into it, those were my 3 biggest needs going into the draft. And then the 2 areas of luxury picks where I thought that they had potential to improve would be an edge rusher to play opposite Nick Bosa and a deep threat wide receiver to take advantage of Trey Lance's ability to stretch the field. Obviously, we know at 61 they took Drake Jackson. They invested in a guy to edge rusher opposite Bosa. And then at 105, they took Danny Gray to be that deep threat receiver to take advantage of Trey Lance's ability to stretch the field. So they took care of the needs that I wanted. They took care of the luxury picks that I wanted. And then there were a couple of areas where I thought that they could invest, especially with those 3 picks in the 6th round. I thought there were some areas where they could look for depth. One of them, they went a little bit higher than the 6th round because I thought that maybe another running back would be a good area as a depth piece, considering the injury history of the running backs that have played under Kyle Shanahan's system. Also with Trey Sermon, we still don't know if he actually fits this offense. He seems more of like a I don't know exactly how to put it, but he's not a one cutback. He doesn't just see the hole and go. He tries to, juke people behind the line of scrimmage, and it doesn't really fit the system. So that running back was an area where I thought they could add a depth piece. Personally, I wouldn't have gone as high as 93. I mean, you got 134, 172. 220, 221. I think they could have waited, but that is an area where I think they could have added a depth piece. So I don't disagree with the position. I just disagree with when it was taken. I think at 93, and even if you had your heart set on this guy, I'm blanking on his name, Davis Price. Even if you had your heart set on him and he's gone by 134 or 172, running backs don't go very frequently in the NFL draft. This isn't, the 1980s anymore. You could have gotten a different player, Pierre Strong or someone along those lines, later in the draft. But, I understand taking a running back. Like I said, I just think, 93 was a little early. Another area where I thought that they could add a depth piece, and it turned out to be Mr. Irrelevant, was a quarterback. Now, you say you drafted Trey Lance last year. What do you need a quarterback for? Well, you need a backup quarterback. You need, in my opinion, I think with this team, I think you need a backup for everything, because I look at it, 2 of the last 4 years, the season has gone down the toilet because of injuries. So I have no problem with adding depth at every position on the roster. I don't want to see another season where a couple guys go down and then you have no plan B in place. So I like the selection of Mr. Irrelevant. I don't think that Nate Sudfeld is a true backup quarterback. I look at Nate Sudfeld as more of like Trey Lance's buddy. You know what I mean? Like if Trey Lance is thirsty, Nate Sudfeld goes to get him a bottle of water. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Trey Lance after practice, Nate Sudfeld can carry his helmet. Things like that. I see him as more of like, no, honestly, he's like, how when sometimes.
No, I don't. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just think it's a funny analogy.
It's like, how sometimes when you go onto an airplane, you can bring like an emotional support pet. Like you got like a little like iguana or something that makes you happy and it keeps you from getting anxious on the flight. I think that that's Nate Sudfeld. He's Trey Lance's emotional support pet. He's there to just have someone, Trey Lance is someone to talk on, a veteran who he can talk to. I don't think Nate Sudfeld is there if Trey Lance goes down in week 3 to fill in for the final 14 games. I don't want to see that. So I like the selection of Brock Purdy. I don't know if he's at this point, if he's a better quarterback than Nate Sudfeld, but again, competition. Now you have 2 guys that, vying for one spot. I know that Nate Sudfeld got a guaranteed contract, so he's going to be on the roster no matter what. I don't know if they're going to have the roster flexibility to be able to carry 3 quarterbacks into the season, but even if they put Purdy on the practice squad or something along those lines, I like it. Like I said, I don't really consider Nate Sudfeld to be a true backup quarterback. I think he's there to benefit Trey Lance. And especially since Brock Purdy is so young, if he is a viable backup quarterback, I don't know, being drafted in the 7th round, how many years of a contract do they get for that?
It's a 4-year. I think they're 4-year contracts for all the rookies. But
Okay.
I know I hear what you're saying when it comes to Sudfeld. I'm with you on that. I also think that when you look at Brock Purdy, I like the Brock Purdy pick. I like that pick at 262. I think at the end it's the last pick of the draft. It was a good selection by the 49ers, because if you don't pick him there, I've heard people say, well, just sign him afterwards. But the problem is if you don't pick him, you're not guaranteed that he's going to choose you, because once the draft ends, it's like college recruiting. It's every man for himself, and whoever can give the biggest guarantee is going to get the guy, right? Because that's the same. That's not.
And you don't get him for a 4-year contract, right? If you sign him as an undrafted free agent, is that only a 1-year deal?
I believe I think it's a 3, but it's different. But okay. Purdy is a guy who I see Brock Purdy, and I see Nick Mullins, Jeff Garcia, that kind of a player. Somebody who Jeff Garcia was Jeff Garcia and Nick Mullins, there's a big difference in terms of their ability. But but let me explain what I see is that Brock Purdy, I see Jeff Garcia and Brock Purdy in the way that Jeff Garcia had to fight his way into the NFL. And I see that with Brock Purdy as well. He had to fight his way from high school to college. He had played there for a long period of time at Iowa State, but then nobody thought he was going to get picked. And so they had to work his way. He had to fight for to get drafted. And I think that we had the same kind of a thing with Jeff Garcia. He wasn't highly recruited out of high school, had to go to junior college, then ended up at San Jose State, ended up in Canada, had to work his way, and then eventually played pretty good. The reason I say that Purdy reminds me of Nick Mullins is because it doesn't have the arm, a little bit limited athleticism. I feel like Purdy's a better athlete than Mullins. I think he's much better than Mullins when it comes to athleticism, but the arm strength isn't there. He's best off of play action. He's best over the middle. I think he's the guy that Kyle Shanahan can figure out how to work around.
Yeah.
If he was ever had to come on and play.
And especially at pick 262, you really don't have much to lose at that point. If he can develop into a backup quarterback, then who knows? Maybe, you get 3 years of backup quarterback service out of him, and then you do essentially what the Patriots did with Jimmy Garoppolo. You draft him in the 7th round. Maybe if you could develop him, maybe you could trade him for a 5th rounder. It doesn't sound like much, but you essentially get 3 years of a very cost-controlled backup quarterback, and then you exchange them for a higher pick than you drafted them. So those are the kind of little moves that, you add up a lot of smart moves like that, and it can really benefit your football team. Yeah. And then the last position that I thought we could use some depth at was the interior of the defensive line, because I'm concerned with Javon Kinlaw that he may have recurring health problems, that it might be just his knee condition. It might just end up becoming a recurring injury. So I was kind of hoping that they'd be able at some point to add some depth on the defensive line, and then they did that. They drafted Kalia Davis.
Yeah.
Now, he's not the most well-rounded of players, but he's an excellent run stuffer. And when you're drafting that, at that point of the draft, and when you're drafting to fill needs, you kind of want to find guys with one specific skill set that they can do really well. You're not going to, at that point in the draft, you're not going to get the best defensive tackle in the draft. But if you can find a guy who does one thing very well, who can play, in the obvious running situations, or, give you a little bit of depth, work as a rotation piece, I really like that pick as well.
Yeah. Well, the thing with Davis, I like the pick. I really like the pick. I like the athleticism. I like the explosiveness off the line of scrimmage, the way that he can disrupt the backfield. I don't know if he's a guy we're going to even see play for the 49ers this year, because he's coming off of that torn ACL that he suffered early on in 2021. So he might even end up on the PUP list. When I heard John Lynch talking about him, it sounded to me like this is a guy that they're going to really take their time with, and if he's not 100%, they're going to just go ahead and roll him on that PUP list so that they don't have to rush him. So we'll see. We'll see when he gets around to playing. But I really like Kalia Davis. I really like, other than the Tyrion Davis price, I feel like they made good selections for the most part. Guys that fit what the 49ers look for, and that are good depth pieces for this team. And outside of Drake Jackson and Price and Gray, I don't think any of these guys are going to start for them this year. They're all depth pieces that are expected to be there for them next year when they need to. The 49ers are in a position where they need to. They're going to be paying big money to a number of guys, and so there's going to be a big group of guys that are going to have to be on those rookie deals. And this is the time where they're getting to the point where they're going to have to hit on their draft picks in order to sustain the roster for the long term. And I do think that that's what they accomplished this week.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of them are, like you said, for future spots on the roster, maybe not necessarily immediately, but that's what you have to do. Like you also said, that's what you have to do if you're going to sustain success. If you look at, taking Aaron Banks in the 2nd round last year, I think he only played like five snaps last year. But now that Laken Tomlinson has left in free agency, now all of a sudden, oh, wow, it's really good that we took this guy last year who might be able to fill out that spot. So, right. Yeah, I agree. And also, like you said, with the salary cap, too. I mean, you can't pay every player, above market value in order to fit all the players under the salary cap. If you're going to have top-end talent being paid, top-end money, such as, Trent Williams, Fred Warner, hopefully Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. If you're going to have guys like that taking up a large percentage of your salary cap, you also have to have the bottom of the roster, cost controlled. And there's 2 ways to do that. Number one, with draft picks, and number 2, with, veteran players, 1 year prove it deals, things of that nature, guys who are towards the end of their career. You look at like a Josh Norman type, players that can fill in at certain, roles for a season. So,
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think we're on the same page. I need to jump over to another caller and get to some of these comments over in the comment section. But you got some. I really like your call, Eric. That was a really really good, a lot of good takes.
All right, thanks, Jack. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking my call, and have a good night.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick before I move on, I want to jump into a couple of the things that I've been seeing taking place over in the comment section. Just in terms of the discussion, I think it's a really good discussion y'all are having over here. But also, like Raphael 5629er says there, like and subscribe. If you can do that for me, that'd be fantastic. But, and also really quick, Celts Chronicles, he says, best roster we've had in a long time. Stay blessed, everyone. Faithful, rise up. This is our year. I do feel like this is probably one of the better 49er rosters that we've seen. Going back to a couple of years ago, I've said this a few times. I think you go back to 2019, that was the turning point. The 2020 roster, even though they had all those injuries, if the quarterback had stayed healthy, I think they would have won. That's why this roster, I think everything about this team really comes down to what Trey Lance does. If Trey Lance plays like Trey Lance is possible, he will. The 49ers are going to go places. I'm trying to get over here. You guys were going on and on about the running backs, and there were a couple of good points that were made over there, and it was with regards to Trey Sermon, and I'm not seeing it right now. Oh, here we go. I'm getting up there. You guys have been talking a lot, so that's good. It starts off with Bryant saying that Trey Sermon's not going to be a member of the 49ers much longer. I don't know about that. I think that there's a possibility that there's a role for Trey Sermon on this team. There was another one who, Bryant also says, and this is true too, if Sermon was the guy, Debo wouldn't have gotten all the carries last year. And, the part of it with Trey Sermon is I don't understand quite why he was not utilized to the extent that he was last year. When you watch Trey Sermon play last year, when he got his carries, the Green Bay game, let's go back to the Green Bay game. That's the one where he started in that game in place of Elijah Mitchell. And this might have been part of where Kyle Shanahan started to sour on him. They only gave him the ball 10 times. He only picked up 31 yards. He averaged 3.1 yards per carry. He did score a touchdown in that game down in the red zone after I think that was in the second half. But 10 yard, he only averaged 3.1 yards per carry in that game. And then you go over and you look, that's pretty bad, right? Yeah, that's not good. Only 3.1 yards per carry against Green Bay when you get a chance. Okay, well, let's go look at what Elijah Mitchell did against Green Bay. Elijah Mitchell against Green Bay in the playoffs, guess what? He averaged 3.1 yards per carry. The difference is that the 49ers believed in him. I don't know if they really believed in Trey Sermon at that point. And so, when Sermon was given the carries in week 4, he put up 89 yards. He averaged 4.7 yards per carry against Seattle, ran the ball well. Running backs don't get yardage by themselves. It doesn't matter who you are, unless you're Walter Payton maybe, or one of the all-time greats. You're going to need help from your offensive line to make plays and get yardage. And when you got a guy who is able to get 4.7 yards, obviously a part of that comes from the offensive line. I mean, how many times did you watch Elijah Mitchell run up people's backs last year? He had a good season. Don't get me wrong. Elijah Mitchell's a good player. I think the reason that you saw Ty Davis Price get drafted had more to do with the fact that if you go through this last season, Elijah Mitchell was inactive in week 3 and 4 because of injury. He was inactive in week 11 because of injury. He was inactive weeks 14, 15, and 16 due to injury. And that's why you saw the pick is they needed to go out and get guys who could be healthy. And I'm not a big Tyrion Davis fan. I don't feel like he's really an upgrade over Elijah Mitchell in terms of what he brings to the table. Mitchell's a good back. Mitchell's not a breakaway threat. He's not a guy that's going to run to the end zone. We saw that other than against against who was it? Week 1 against Detroit, he had the big run. But other than that, he didn't break away and score. He wasn't a breakaway threat, and that's between that and the fact that they had some injuries, I don't know. I'm a bigger believer in Trey Sermon than maybe I should be, but he's a volume carrier. He needs to be running the ball a lot in order to put up the numbers and get a feel for the game and all those kind of things. It shows in his college film. You look at Ty Davis Price, and Ty Davis Price averaged 4.8 yards last year. A lot of that came against, he had a huge game against Florida. That's awesome. Against Alabama, he goes over 100 yards. I think he had like 26 carries for like 106 yards or something like that. That looks great. You see the highlight film on Twitter, or the highlight clip on Twitter, of him breaking the run up the middle against Alabama for a 40-yard run. He gets caught from behind because he doesn't have the speed to beat the defensive back to the end zone. The rest of the again, but that was one carry out of 25 or whatever it was in that game. Trey Davis Price it's going to be an interesting one to watch. I'm not trying to say that he's a bad pick. I'm just not excited about him to the extent that maybe some other folks are. I try to get excited about it by saying that maybe he's going to be able to be that big back like Alfred Morris was for Kyle Shanahan back in the Washington days in 2012 and 2013. We'll see. I don't have a problem with a running back being taken in round 3 either. Don't have a problem with running back going at 92, 93 or 105. I had actually mocked a running back to the 49ers at 105 on my channel when I did the mock draft show with Rob Shue over here. It wasn't Terry and Davis Price. It was the running back from Cincinnati, Jerome Ford, who I felt was a better. The reason I liked Jerome Ford better was because of his ability to catch out the backfield, and he had the ability to take it, all the way. He fell even further in the draft. One last thing and I'm going to get to the call. Danny's waiting on me. The one other thing that I'm going to say is, I think that the odd man out of the running back room shouldn't be Trey Sermon. It should be either Jeff Wilson Jr. or JaMycal Hasty. Probably JaMycal Hasty. I think Trey Sermon, let's just put Trey Sermon up against JaMycal Hasty for a second. In their college careers, Trey Sermon had more receiving yards than JaMycal Hasty, and he did it with quite a few less receptions. He averaged over 10 yards per reception at Oklahoma, and between Oklahoma and Ohio State. This is the guy who can catch the ball and do some things with it. The 49ers just need to start utilizing him, and I think they know what they're going to do there. I think we are going to see him get used a little bit more this season. We'll see. I could be completely wrong, and you guys can all come back and laugh at me when the season starts if he's not on the roster. But I think Trey Sermon's there's a role for Trey Sermon. I don't think there's a role for JaMycal Hasty moving forward, or Jeff Wilson Jr. One of those two, I think, is one's going to be out. And I agree with you, Matt. I do believe Hasty is a fumble waiting to happen, and you put Hasty in the backfield, and he's not a running threat. Not really. He every once in a while he can break one, but he's not most 9 times out of 10 he doesn't threaten the defense with the run. So, gonna jump over really quick. Hopefully Danny's still on the line. See him here. Let me see if he's in here. Let me change this over really quick. Boom. Danny, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. Are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
No, I can't hear you. Can you maybe try calling back in?
How about now? Can you hear me?
No, it's breaking up really bad.
Okay. Let me take up a Bluetooth. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. So, yes, I went on my rant there about the running back position. I like it. I like the draft overall, really. When you start to look at this draft, Drake Jackson, you listen to what the 49ers say about this pick, and it matches up with what you see in general, right? The 49ers really like to have speed opposite of Nick Bosa. And part of the reason they like to have that speed opposite of Nick Bosa is because they expect Nick Bosa to get doubled. If Bosa's getting doubled, that means the other guy is going to have a single one-on-one and that speed can help him get around the edge and get to the quarterback. Jackson has that in droves. 4 or 5 guy who can drop into coverage and do all kinds of things there. The role that I envision Drake Jackson having for the 49ers, I don't see him being a starter week 1. I think he's going to be more of a situational pass rusher that's going to come in. Think of him more of a, in the beginning of his career, being more of a Aldon Smith type of role as far as coming in in the pass rushing situations. That's kind of the role I see out of him. With Danny Gray, I see a guy who can be the 4th wide receiver. The 49ers think that he can be an X, which is the receiver that lines up on the line of scrimmage out wide. They feel like he can be an outside receiver, and I can see that. He's a really good receiver. Like I said, he only played 18 games at SMU. He was a junior college transfer. He's just starting to come into his own in terms of a big time player. So the 49ers coaching staff has a work cut out for him, and it's really going to be on the wide receiver coach, the new wide receiver coach, to get him up to speed and get him going. But Danny Gray those guys are really good picks. And then I like the value of Burford and Zackel. I think those guys can become solid backups or starters down the road. Even Sam Womack, the guy who nobody knows about, including myself, I didn't have no idea who Sam Womack was when that pick came up. But you start to look at what he does and what people say about him, and then you start looking at his film a little bit, and he's a heck of an athlete and a heck of a player. And we'll see how he transitions over to the 49ers. Let's give Danny one more shot here before we go too far. Danny, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go. Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
Awesome.
How you doing?
Sorry about that.
No
I'm
problem.
doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Thanks for having this call-in show. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So you kind of touched on what I was going to ask earlier, and I'm kind of late to the show, but I want to ask you, as far as us selecting the running back, who do you think is the odd man out, Trey Sermon or the new running back that we had to select? If you had to choose one, or if one had to go, get cut or whatnot, who would your choice be? Who would you go with?
I think it's going to be. I think it would be Jermichael Hasty. Jeff Wilson Jr. has a little bit of value to them in terms of, if he can be he's a guy similar to Kyle Juszczyk who can do multiple things. So Jeff Wilson Jr. can line up as in the backfield and be your lone running back in the backfield, but also be playing safe, used as like in a fullback role, because he can be a lead blocker. He can catch the ball well in the backfield. There's a lot of good things that you can do with Jeff Wilson Jr. that give him value. I see him as more valuable than Jermichael Hasty. I see Hasty as a guy who might end up back on the practice squad. And then the 49ers went out and they signed a couple of guys. And after the draft, Cyrus Habibi-Likio from Boise State, they signed after the draft. So we'll see. They've definitely added to the room. They have 6 running backs right now. It's going to be, maybe they move both Hasty and Wilson Jr. out at some point this year.
But if you had to choose between Trey Sermon and the new running back that we drafted in the 3rd round, who would you choose?
I would probably go with Trey Sermon. I like Trey Sermon myself. I was high on him last year. I think he still has a lot of things that he can do well. It's just a matter of he needs to get an opportunity with the 49ers. Give it to him. I think he'll be able to do well.
Okay.
Especially with Trey Lance.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. That's good to hear. And as far as that quarterback that we drafted, I don't really know anything about him. I heard you talking about him earlier, but what do you think his role is on the team? What is he going to do? Is he just a camp arm, or do you think he's going to replace Nate Sudfeld or Jimmy? Like, what's going on with that? What do you think the whole thinking is behind that?
I think the thinking behind Purdy was that they wanted to bring him in. They want him to be the 3rd guy, with the possibility of him becoming the backup. Nate Sudfeld works really good with Trey Lance. There's a good relationship there. Trey Lance did the Rich Eisen show right after the season before the Super Bowl, and he talked quite a bit about the help that he received from Nate Sudfeld. So I think that's why the 49ers brought Sudfeld back, and is the way that he works with Trey Lance, not necessarily because of what he does on the field. And then you get a guy like Purdy, who, he's had to battle throughout his career. He had to battle his way on to, over to Iowa State. Started off as like 5th or 6th on the depth chart, became the starting quarterback, a few weeks into the season, his freshman year, and won a lot of games at Iowa State. Got them going, got them rolling, and he's limited. He doesn't have the big arm. Doesn't have, he's not a blazer when he runs or anything like that. He's not going to scare anybody with his legs. Doesn't scare anybody with his arms, but he does enough to get it done. So he's kind of like he's Nick Mullins
2.0
in a lot of ways. But Kyle Shanahan likes those kind of guys. He likes those underdogs that are just fighters and smart guys. And you listen to I listened to Adam Peters talk about why they went with Brock Purdy, and it's it sounds like everything you've ever heard as far as what Kyle Shanahan looks for in a quarterback. Tough in the pocket. He's not afraid to stand in there and get hit. He can deliver the ball over the middle. Good off of play action. It's all the same stuff that we've always heard when it comes to Kyle Shanahan's love for quarterbacks.
Grant Cohn compared him more to C.J. Beathard than Nick Mullins. You think that's a fair assessment?
No, I disagree. I think C.J. Beathard had a bigger arm than Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is in so many ways Nick Mullins. Nick Mullins is a guy who had to kind of fight and scrap his way to where he was, and I think the same thing happens with Purdy. And C.J. Beathard, I mean, I get what he's saying, but I think that Beathard was a guy who the 49ers liked because he came out of a system that looked like what the 49ers do in terms of the pro style stuff. Purdy's not coming from that. Purdy's coming from a spread offense. Similar to Nick Mullins when Nick Mullins ran at Southern Miss. There's a lot of similarities there in terms of the player.
Okay. That's all I have off the top of my head. But thank you. Appreciate it. And keep up the good work.
Absolutely. I appreciate you taking the time to call in and then helping me out with the technical difficulties there. So appreciate it.
Yeah, it was all me. But thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So there we go. I'm not sure if we got any more folks that are going to call in. We don't have any more on the line, but let me see what we got going on over here in the comment section, because you guys and gals have been quite entertaining over there. Tom asks, given Danny Gray's speed, do we make him our kick returner and cut Ray McLeod? Boy, that would be an interesting one. I could see a possibility of something like that, but the 49ers seem to be interested in Ray. I don't see it based off of his past. I don't see it in Ray McLeod based off of his past. The fumble issues and the lack of production and all those kind of things. I don't know. I'm not a big Ray McLeod fan. I like some of the other guys that the 49ers have on their roster over better than him. I do, when you look at that group, I like Malik Turner. I think he's a really good wide receiver that does a lot of things well. Marcus Johnson as well. And then you get into the guys that they signed after the draft. Danny Gray's a really good receiver, but then you look at the guys they signed after the draft and you start looking at a guy like Tay Martin, for example, the kid from Oklahoma State, big time player, makes plays down the field. Same thing with Tasir Mack. He was kind of the downfield target for Kenny Pickett, who was the only quarterback drafted in the first round. So I really like this. I like the depth that this team has. I don't think that I'm overstating it when I say that this team is extremely talented and extremely deep and has just a lot of good players all around. They do a lot of different things. Well, right now, Simon, you asked, what is the best way, in your opinion, to free up cap space to sign the draft class? Will they cut Jimmy or maybe cut the edge, Ebicom, or restructure Ward? So this is an interesting one because based off of the way that the rules are set up, at this point right now, they could sign everybody that's a part of their draft class, because the way that the contracts are structured during this time of the year, there's a rule. It's called the top 51 rule. So it's only your top 51 contracts. And so a lot of the rookies would fall below that top 51 number. So they could sign them because the salary for rookies is so low. They could sign them and they'd still be there. They'd have to make some moves by the time final cuts came. That's when they'd have to worry about being their full 53 being under the salary cap. But the 49ers, as I understand right now, and this is if you're looking for salary cap stuff, I know I'm pretty good with some of it, but at 49ers cap, Jason does a really good job with it over there. But he put out shortly after the draft that the 49ers could sign right now, with the way the top 51 is set, they could sign all of their players that were signed as rookies, their draft picks. They could get all them signed and still be under the salary cap by just a little bit. But when it comes to the season, and they're going to have to do something, the 49ers right now cannot sign Deebo Samuel. I mean, they could sign Deebo Samuel, but with the cap room that the 49ers have right now, they can't give the Deebo Samuel can only get like a $15 million signing bonus is all that they can offer him. If they gave him the minimum, vet minimum that he would get this year, which is $965,000 is his base salary, and a signing bonus of only $15 million, that puts the 49ers right at the salary cap. And he's not going to sign that. We saw AJ Brown, $23.234 million, I believe the signing bonus was there. You add that to the base that they can give them the lowest, and it's over $6 million, and that puts the 49ers over the salary cap. So the bigger question is, the 49ers cannot sign Deebo Samuel to an extension unless he takes well below market value, or Jimmy Garoppolo is traded, or the 49ers do a restructured contract with Jimmy Garoppolo to lower his cap number, or the 49ers go to some of these other players and ask them to restructure, which rolls money forward with those guys that you might not want to do. And I think there's a really good possibility, though, that Samson Ebukam is cut, just based off of, we'll see. It's going to be a really tight competition, I think, between I really liked Samson Ebukam, but I think it's going to be quite a battle between him and Kimiko Ture on the side opposite of Nick Bosa to be the starter, and then Drake Jackson will be the guy that fills in there. Charles Amenahu is the guy. It's going to be really interesting to see how this thing all comes together, because they have Bosa, Armstead, Kinlaw, Ebukam, Amenahu, Hyder, Ridgeway, Ture, Hurst, Jackson, Willis, Givens, Slayton, Barrett, Atkins, and then Kalia Davis, who they also signed. I mean, they just have a ton of guys over there right now on the 90-man roster along that defensive line, and that's going to be so much fun to watch at training camp and see how that all plays out, because I think it's going to be a heck of a battle to see who makes this roster. And then Dan asks, Jack, if they're willing to re-sign Verrett, would they also sign Jalen Hurd? No, they're not going to re-sign Jalen Hurd. That'd be funny, though. That would be funny. The 49ers wide receiver room right now is probably the best that it's been in the time that Kyle Shanahan's been here. I think the guys that they've brought in this offseason have been top notch. And I understand what you're saying here, Simon, that you can't wait till the Deebo drama ends. You're finally get some direction on this, and we got a little bit of direction, but we also know that it's going to be tough. It's going to be a little while before that gets done. I'm not sure what you're getting at there, Mr. G. You say, how are teams going over 50 mil or going 50 mil over? I'm going to look over here and see if there's something else that I missed. Emiliano says they usually keep 3 quarterbacks, with one of them for the practice squad. Maybe if they keep most of the 27. Well, I think Emiliano, I think we're going to see the 49ers keep only 2 quarterbacks this year. I'm pretty sure. I think we're going to see only Trey Lance and Nate Sudfeld on the 53-man roster, with Brock Purdy on the practice squad. I think that's what the 49ers are expecting to do as well. That'll allow them to keep either an extra receiver, an extra defensive lineman, an extra offensive lineman. Go one man heavier somewhere else along the line. I think that's what we're going to see the 49ers do this year. Because typically they do like to keep three, but they've also done it in the past where they had two. I think they had two in 2017 or 18. I think they might have done it in both those years. I don't think it was until 2019 that they started doing three. I think they had two, and then they had to add another one when after Garoppolo got hurt and they had to move guys around. I really like Ebicom too. It's just $8.5 million unless he puts up big numbers this year. That's one of those guys who, when you start looking at Jimmy Garoppolo being on the roster, maybe if you're going to be stuck with him and you're going to be hard headed about moving him off the team, and you're going to try to keep him around as a backup for $27 million, or then that's where you lose a guy like Ebicom to kind of create space for everybody else, because the 49ers will need to. The 49ers can get all of their rookies signed now, but when it gets to their 53-man roster at the end, there will be some guys that they're going to have to move around. It won't fit under at that point. They can fit them now, but they can't fit in the long term. And then Jaheim Raheem, how you doing? Says, can the 49ers trade Debo for elite interior line guy? Yeah, they could. Maybe Baltimore. They need a receiver, don't they? Maybe Baltimore will give the 49ers Tyler Linderbaum. What do you say? Right? I mean, and I'm not even saying that in a joking manner. I'm saying that in kind of a somewhat serious manner. Now that it's not, instead of trading him for a draft pick, you're trading him for a guy who's can be a long-term center if you feel like he's that good. So we'll see how it works out. And then Mr. G, really quick, Jaheim, thank you very much for the donation. I appreciate that as well. Mr. G, 49er 00 says, every year we hear teams 50 mil over the cap. How does that happen? And is there a penalty? Yeah, there is. You have to be under the salary cap from now all the way through the Super Bowl, I believe it is. You have to be under the salary cap. You can be over the salary cap, but for a short period after the Super Bowl, before the start of the new league year. But this is a point where your top 51 contracts have to be below the salary cap number. Once the training camp ends, then it goes to your full 53. And that's where things are going to get tricky for the 49ers, because the way the 51, it's not even like 51. There's some like averaging, and it's kind of a funky thing that they use there, and can make it a little bit, that's a little bit difficult to explain. It's not always necessarily, it's their top 51 contracts, but there's some averaging and other stuff that goes into it. 49ers are fine right now. They could sign their draft picks. But once it gets to the full 53-man roster, they would be over the cap, and they're going to have to work around it. Bryant asks, when do you think they trade or cut Jimmy Garoppolo? I think that comes in July, once Jimmy Garoppolo can throw. Right now, quarterback, it's kind of important if you're going to get a quarterback that the guy can throw. I'm sorry, I'm not kind of a jerk with that, but you know what I'm saying. The teams are going to want to see him throw, and he's got to be able to throw. And once he starts able to throw, I think we're going to see Carolina be an option, and I think Houston will be an option, and maybe even New York. I think he's going to be gone. Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't think will be with this team once they open training camp. If he is, there's going to be a lot of ripple effect throughout the roster, and it's a bad deal, and the 49ers should get raked over the coals for it. Just like they should get raked over the coals if Deebo Samuel ends up getting traded now and not re-signed, and they lose him next year. Those kind of things. Matt says, let's hypothetically say the Niners really keep Jimmy. What realistic moves could they make to clear up space to sign the rookie class and sign Deebo? Samson Ebicom is one of them. They could, restructure the deal for Trent Williams, which I don't think they want to do. Nobody's talking about it. Probably is going to happen regardless. But Trent Williams has an option in his contract that needs to be picked up by like April 1st of next year. then and he, if they pick it up at that point, then he gets it's the $10 million guarantee plus it also picks up the remaining 3 years of his contract. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Trent Williams, but he's another one. The 49ers could give a new contract possibly to Jimmy Ward. That would lower his cap number for this year. They could always go to Jimmy. If they're not going to trade Jimmy, they could always keep him and restructure his contract and open up cap space. I mean, there's all kinds of moves they can make. So we'll see. Blind Tom, thank you for the donation, Blind Tom. I really appreciate that. $10. That's nice. Thank you. He says, hey, Brother Jack, I think Brock Purdy is going to be the backup. He's better than some locals have said. I don't think he's going to be the backup this year, but I like the pick. I liked what, I think this is, I'm all for the underdog kind of guys. I like those underdog stories. And this is a guy who I think can come in and be a big help for the 49ers right off the bat, even if it's only as a practice squad guy. He's a really good quarterback. I mean, I'm just going to say what Adam Peters said. Adam Peters told Matt Mayoko on the 49ers YouTube channel that the 49ers believe that Brock Purdy played as good as any quarterback in the draft in 2021. He doesn't have the big arm, doesn't have quite as much speed, but when it comes to playing the position, he does it well, and he's won a bunch of games at Iowa State. So we'll see how it lands with Purdy, and I don't think he's going to be the backup this year, but it wouldn't surprise me to have him be the backup beyond this season. He's a Kyle Shanahan type of quarterback. Frank, thank you for the donation. Says, seems like the 49ers are building for the zone read. Davis Price seems to me more of a faster Alfred Morris. Trey Sermon fits with the new offense and Banks. I agree. I think that's a really good point as well. I don't know if it's the zone read as much as just the inside run. It's going to be interesting to see how it works out, but there could be a change up there. And Trey Sermon, I think, works really well with a quarterback of like Trey Lance. Davis Price is a guy who we saw definitely hit between the tackles quite a bit during his time at LSU. I don't know if we're going to see him. I'm really interested to see if he can get to the edge on the outside zone. So, Alfred Morris is a guy who was a big dude who was able to make it work. And Davis Price weighed in at the combine at only 219, but he plays closer to 230. And it's very similar to Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell, when he went through his pro day, and part of the reason he ran so fast is because he lost a bunch of weight. Then, it comes to the 49ers and you put a bunch of that weight back on. Not quite as fast as he was in the 40 time, and now you have Elijah Mitchell talking about putting on more weight as well just a couple of days ago, on Monday before the draft. So, I like it. I like this draft. Again, I understand the folks who are concerned about it, but if I was grading this draft, I'm not a big grades guy. I'd say it's somewhere in the B range, B minus, whatever. It's an above average draft, especially without a first round pick. Drake Jackson looks good. Danny Gray has some stuff. Burford and Zackel give them depth for the long haul at offensive line. Same thing with Womack and Castro Fields at cornerback. Really like the Kalia Davis pick in the 6th round. I think that guy is going to be, if his knee works out and he's able to come in, I think he's going to be a really good defensive lineman for them in 2023 and beyond. And then, we talked about Purdy, but we haven't really got into it. But Jason Poe, I mean, when you look at Jason Poe, that guy, he's got some wheels. It's a big dude. Jason Poe and Donovan West, 2 really good interior offensive linemen that they picked up after the draft. Really good athletic players. Really looking forward to seeing what they can do. Leon O'Neal. There were people who, when you looked at the scouting report for Leon O'Neal, said it looked like, myself included, said that it read a lot like what you see out of Jaquowski Tart. So it's going to be fun to see what he can do. I would have expected West to go in round 3 or 4, O'Neal to go in round 6, Jason Poe to be a 6th rounder. So for the 49ers to get those guys after the draft, this is a really solid class. They went in here, they went in and they just added 22 players to their 23 players to their roster. And I think they added a number of guys. It's going to be quite a battle just to even make it onto the practice squad. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this team goes. It's going to be a lot of competition. That's what the 49ers strive on. It's what they build for. And they've got a roster right now that's going to head into training camp and be ready to go. And a lot of work, a lot of competition. It's going to be a lot of fun. And Tom, you're right. It's pronounced Zakel. Thank you, not Zakel. Zakel. You're right, Zakel. I need to get better at that. I appreciate you for pointing that out. Not Zakel, Zakel. So there you have it, folks. We went for about an hour and 20 minutes. We had some really good calls. A lot of fun there. You guys were awesome in the comment section. Thank you for the super chats, those of you that did those. We got Simon all the way from Poland joining us tonight. That was a lot of fun. The international flavor from Europe. Anytime I can get somebody from across the pond on the show with me, that's something that I enjoy. Somebody who hadn't really been west of the Mississippi, had only been to the East Coast once in his life. A few years ago, back in 2019, made a trip out to Europe. Went to Spain for a week right after the draft in 2019. Celebrated the Nick Bosa signing because I wasn't covering the team at that point. Kind of joking on that one. I wasn't a big Nick Bosa fan. That's a story for another day. Anyway, real quick, I want to say thanks to all of you guys. Got a bunch of you guys are too kind. Bryant says, great show, Jack. We've got Raphael telling me great show. We got Big Lukey over here saying thanks. Then we've got Andrew with the thank you. And Harold drops it with a 49ers worldwide. That is right. If you guys can do me a favor, hit that like button. If you're watching the channel and you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button as well. Get over and also hit that little bell so you get notified every time we go live, so you don't ever miss the shows. And then also every once in a while, set 49ers.pressdemocrat.com to a favorite on your computer so that you can go check that out on a daily basis. During the off season, it's not on every day that I put something up there, but once the season starts, it's usually Monday through Sunday, 7 days a week that you get 49ers content at the on the Press Democrat blog, 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. So again, thanks everybody for joining. Like, subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow night with my buddy Sunil for the 49ers Throwback Show. Take care. Have a great rest of your Monday and talk to y'all soon.